Sometimes I forget until I'm a few minutes into it. So buonasera a tutti. Hello,
Anyway.
good evening, everybody. My name is Lisa Di Natale, and I am the president of the Vermont Italian Cultural Association, and we're delighted to have been invited to present an introduction to obtaining Italian citizenship. We have made this presentation now 8 or 9 times, I think, and we continue to have 100 people sign up each time. So there's obviously a real keen interest in understanding what the process is and eligibility, and those are all the things that we'll go through this evening. If you just joined us, there is a chat, an opportunity to post a question in the chat. And we will get to those questions. Either Jerry will respond to them as he's able. And then we also have some time at the end too. And again, if you would just mute yourself, so there aren't too many distractions. So with that, we will get underway. So I'm just going to say a couple things about the Vermont Italian Cultural Association. We are a 40-year-old organization. We've only been a nonprofit for about 12 years, with the mission of preserving and promoting Italian culture in Vermont. I don't think many of you are Vermonters or located in Vermont, but if you don't know, Vermont has a very deep and rich history with Italy, having welcomed Italian immigrants to work in both the marble and granite quarries here in Vermont. Many Northern Italians, primarily from Carrara and in that region, settled in Barry and in Proctor. And so there is a really strong connection to Italy here in Vermont, both with native Italians as well as many Italian Americans. And so our organization is really dedicated to continuing to promote the cultural contributions and the cultural and celebrate the cultural contributions of Italians over the years. We have a lot of different activities. You can see I've just listed a few here. We have a website, vermontitalianculturalassociation.org, if you're interested in learning more. We do a combination of in-person and virtual events. If you've ever spent a winter in Vermont, it can get a little dark and snowy, so we like to be able to bring our events such as book readings and lectures, et cetera, to our members through Zoom. So that's just a little bit about it. If you have any questions, you can certainly ask me or send me an email at the end, and we'll provide that information to you. I am joined tonight by 2 VICA members, Jerry Carbone and Mark D'Ambrosi. Mark is actually a Connecticut resident. And I'm going to let them introduce themselves, and then I'll tell you a little bit more about the overview for the presentation. Jerry, you want to start?
Sure. Buonasera a tutti. My name's Jerry. I live in Brattleboro, Vermont. I've been here for the past 46 years. I was the library director at the public library, and I'm originally from Denver, Colorado. My parents and ancestors come from Calabria, Potenza and Basilicata, and Sicily. So hope you have fun tonight, and please put your questions in the chat. As Lisa mentioned, I'll try to answer them, and the ones I can't, we'll save till the end, and Mark and Lisa can address them.
And Jerry.
Mark.
Hi, my name is Mark. Buonasera a tutti. My name is Mark D'Ambrosi. Lisa said I'm from Connecticut. I live in Connecticut. I was born and raised in Waterbury. Lived in the Midwest for a little bit of time, but then came back here. I am a pharmacist for Yale New Haven Hospital. That's my main career. And I have 3 kids and a wife. I've been married for almost about 35 years this next week, actually. And my family all comes from Italy, from the region of Campania, the provinces of Caserta, Avellino, and Salerno. And this is going to be a fun night. Hopefully you guys will enjoy what you're going to learn.
Thank you. And again, my name is Lisa Di Natale. I was born and raised outside of Boston. I'm half Sicilian. My grandparents came from Sicily, from a small town, Pietraperzia. And Mark didn't mention it, but both he and I are dual citizens. We've gone through the process. Jerry is in the process. He's had his appointment in Boston. So we have not only just our own personal experiences that we can share with you, but just what we have learned along the way through the resources. And Jerry and Mark are both genealogists and have a lot of expertise. So we're going to focus tonight. There are a couple of different ways to pursue Italian citizenship, but we are going to focus on it through sanguinis, which is through blood, because it's the most straightforward, and it's often the path that most people take. We'll cover eligibility, sort of the fundamentals of the process, what you need to know, what you need to gather, what kinds of challenges you might encounter, kind of an estimate on the timeline and your costs, and information about how and where to apply. And as I mentioned, you can find more resources on our website under resources. So we start with this slide. You know, chi si volta e chi si gira sempre a casa va a finire. And when Jerry and Mark and I compiled our pictures, we all kind of chuckled to ourselves, because we said, you know, we could probably find ourselves in all of these pictures, since all of our families look quite alike, with the exception of me up in the right corner with holding my passport. But when I'm asked why I pursued my Italian citizenship, it was really to reconnect with my heritage and to honor my ancestors, my grandparents who came from Sicily, and to also honor my father, who was very deeply connected to his Sicilian heritage, and he passed that along to his children. What he didn't know was that he could also pass along citizenship, and I didn't learn that until 2017, at which time I began to sort of consider doing it. But really, it is about the journey of reconnecting with our roots, with our families, with our culture. What we have found as we've done this presentation, people have shared with us that they've discovered family they didn't know they had. Also discovered some interesting secrets they didn't know existed in the family, but that's another presentation. But I know probably for most of you, the reasons for pursuing or considering pursuing your citizenship is for the same reasons that Mark and Jerry and I have all shared. So I'm going to kick off and send it over to Mark here. He's going to take us through the first half, and then I'll pick up a little bit later on.
Okay, so for seeking Italian citizenship, you do not need to live in Italy. You can do this from the comfort of your home. If your line is proven and you can, it maintains the bloodline from immigrant to firstborn child, or your American child born in the United States. Is it possible there's somebody's microphone is on and there's an echo? If someone could make sure they mute themselves.
Yes, I'll take care of that for us.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks so much.
Jerry.
Okay, thank you. There's no cultural exam to pass. You do not need to speak Italian if you're going through juris sanguinis, which is through the blood. And it does give you the right to visit and reside in all the EU countries without a visa. The marriage requirement is a different requirement. We will basically just touch upon it, but it's a totally different conversation to have. This is one specific for people that are within the bloodline. You want to go to the next slide. So through the bloodline, obviously it means that's the right of the blood. In America, as a juxtaposition, we have juris solis, which is the right of the soil. So obviously, if you're born in America on this soil, you are American. But in Italy, you could be born in America, and if the bloodline is maintained and the link is maintained, regardless of how many generations back to a specific date in the Italian history books, you would be able to claim citizenship. So basically, citizenship is simply being born to an Italian parent regardless of the location. So if you were born here in Massachusetts or anywhere in the US or outside of Italy, as long as the immigrant that came to that country and then if they naturalize or not, it's all done after the birth of that child. It maintains the line. We'll talk about that. It's automatically passed from child to from parent to child. In the case we're going to talk about, it's going to be passed from father to child, or the patrilineal line. The 1948 change from when Italy became a republic, they changed the constitution, and in 1948, women could then pass on their citizenship to their children. But we're going to be talking primarily about men, although there are times that women get in the line here, and it still maintains the path forward. And so basically we talk about, we do not want the line to be broken, and we'll talk about that, but there are no generational limits for Italian citizenship. Okay, so these are laws, or not laws, these are dates and laws to be mindful of. So the first one, the 17th of March, 1861, is the day that Italy became a nation. Prior to that day, Italy was a peninsula of city-states that we associate to be what we know as Italy. So if you've done any of your genealogy as avid genealogists, or even just curious genealogists, you may find records in the 1830s and 40s of your family living in the towns that you recognize as your ancestral hometowns. At that time, prior to 1861, for southern Italy, it was the Kingdom of Two Sicilies. Prior to that was the Kingdom of Naples and the Kingdom of Sicily. And then there were all city-states to the north. In 1861, there was unification, and that became the Kingdom of Italy. And then again in 1948, it became the Republic of Italy. That would be the Italian piece. In America, in February 20th of 1907, the law mandated that women automatically took the citizenship from their husbands. So if you descend, or you have an immigrant woman that's an Italian that comes to America with her parents and marries an American man in, say, 1904, that Italian woman is no longer considered, in the eyes of America, as having allegiance to Italy. She's now Italian. So we're going to skip over 1912 for a second. 1922 is when that automatic citizenship for women ended. So it was about 15 years or so, give or take a few months. That after that date, women would automatically would not be considered naturalized. The 1912 law, so citizens who naturalized before this date, July 1st of 1912. So if your great-grandfather naturalized in 1910 and your grandfather was a toddler, also born in Italy, coming with his family, when Papa naturalized, all the babies became citizens. Everyone in the family would lose their Italian citizenship. After 1912, that law stopped. And so that way if the father naturalized, then the children did not naturalize. They did not become citizens, and would have to become citizens on their own right. Again, the very last date we talked about, that's we kind of bookend the end. January 1st of 1948 is when women could pass on their citizenship as Italian citizens to their children, because Italy then became a republic. Okay, so the Italian government identifies 5 categories of entitlement. So if you were born in the United States, this would be you, or a country other than Italy, and you could be recognized an Italian citizen as described in any of the categories. So for tonight's discussion, we're going to follow category 3, and we'll talk more about category 3. But all the consulate websites will use this nomenclature for categories. And then when you look there, you obviously would know your lines and how things are set up. You're going to determine which category, which line you're going to proceed with. So they're going to provide you a detailed explanation of all the different categories and what you need to do to move forward in the process for application. So for Massachusetts, the consulate that you would be beholden to would be Boston. If you are in anywhere outside of New England other than Connecticut. So Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, the consulate you would go to would be New York City. Okay, we'll go there next.
Okay.
Okay, so let's look at category 3. It's highlighted here. Again, we're going to talk about through the father's line. Now, this doesn't say their mothers could be in here, but we're going to strictly do it this way just to make it easy for people to understand, because the concept does get kind of convoluted because you're looking, when women get involved, you're really looking at dates even more closely. So for category 3, your paternal grandfather was born in Italy, and your father was either born in America or in another country other than Italy. So your father would be a child of the immigrant not born in Italy, and your paternal grandfather was still an Italian citizen at the time of his son's birth, which would be your father's birth. So that means he did not become an American or a foreign country citizen. So if he's from Canada, he did not become a naturalized Canadian or a naturalized Brit, if you're in England. So same rules follow. So we're going to talk specifically about America. Then neither you nor your father ever renounced your citizenship. The last part of renunciation, people don't renounce. That pretty much makes you a stateless person. You have no country of origin because you renounced the place that you would call home, and you don't have a new place. Most Italian Americans that are going for dual citizenship, especially people that would be like my father fighting in World War II, never would have even thought he had Italian citizenship. So he would have no sense or knowledge to renounce anything. And why would he? It wouldn't make a difference. He never saw himself as an Italian citizen at the time. He was American. He was born here. That was the way we were raised. But again, no renunciation, and people typically don't renounce. There'd be no reason that my father, as an American, unless he was renouncing and leaving America and then was stateless, and people just don't do that. The process of naturalization transfers allegiance from one country to the next, but it's never a renunciation. Okay, so to break it down further, paternal grandfather was born in Italy, your father was born in the US, your paternal grandfather was still a citizen at the time of his birth, which would be your father's birth, and neither you nor your father renounced your Italian citizenship. That would qualify you. The biggest piece is going to be the time of, if naturalization took place for your grandfather, it would have to be after the birth of your father. If it's before, there could be a family of 8 children and the father naturalizes in the middle of the birth order of his children. The ones previous to him becoming an American, they were born to an Italian citizen with allegiance to Italy, and then he naturalized, and then the children born after the naturalization, they would be born to a naturalized American citizen. Even though he was born in Italy, his allegiance is no longer to the country of Italy.
Mark, I just wanted to add, it's not uncommon for there to be families where some of the children are eligible to become Italian citizens and others are not. And it's simply because of the timing of the birth of their parent or correct. So
that's right. That's right. It all depends on the timing. So really in the timeline of a family, the best scenario would be that either if the grandfather naturalized after the birth of all of his children, and then all of the grandchildren and anybody that comes after would be eligible, or he never became a citizen. And then there's obviously, you have to prove either way and then have to get documentation either way. But then you would never have to worry about the line being broken. But a lot of Italians coming to America at different times in their timeline for living here become naturalized at some point. So it's really, if you're not sure, that's one of the things you're going to need to find out is if they naturalized, when they naturalized. Go to the next slide, Lisa. Okay, so naturalization is a process where the allegiance changes. So before naturalization, people are categorized as alien. That's how they're seen. If you do anything with history, you'll see enemy aliens. They were people in Japan that were put in camps. Those were considered aliens. There was a whole category. They even put Italians in camps because of allegiances in the country during the war. So they use that word to distinguish between those who were not born here and naturalized and those who were born here and just automatically American. Many Americans did come to, many Italians did come to the United States, not all of them naturalized. So you have to figure out your status there. There were three things they needed to do. They needed to petition to the U.S. government. They had to then receive the recognition, and then they would get a receipt of the naturalization document, which will show you a receipt of that of an ancestor. I'm not sure if one of ours, it's not one of mine, but it could be, or maybe somebody, it could be anyone. But the process doesn't begin. This is a myth. The process does not begin when people come into the port. So coming into Ellis Island, the port of Boston, the port of Portland, the port of Providence or Philadelphia does not start the process. The person has to make a request and petition the government. They have to learn some things. They have to be prepared to answer questions in order to have enough knowledge to be able to get recognized. So it's not just an automatic process. And some people start the process and they get sidetracked. Life happens, or they don't continue, or they go all the way and they get pushed back saying you don't have enough information. There's lots of back and forth that go forward. So nothing is smooth going from beginning to end. Okay, again, the dates of naturalization are going to be critical to when, to determine what's going forward in your line and how it impacts you. And also because of the birth dates of the immigrant also is important because the immigrant needs to be born after the 17th of March, 1861. You have to be born in the Kingdom of Italy in order for the to be considered as an Italian, because that's when Italy first began as a country. Okay, so we're going to look at a couple of census, just so you have an idea of what we're looking at and how, if you've done any kind of research on your family to determine, or if you're just curious about their status for citizenship and naturalization. So columns, and this is a 1900 census, columns 13 through 18 will talk about the places of birth of the immigrant and his or her parents. So this could be the mother and father could be listed on the census. This could be a child, or it could be he's the head of household and he's talking about his parents back in Italy. Column 16 is the year of immigration. Column 17 tells me how many years he's been here. And column 18 will then say what the status is. This is an alien. This is 1900. If you do the math, 1895 and 5 is 1900. So in 1900, this person is considered an alien. And then, so that kind of, it starts the line. You have to sometimes get a couple of different census records that are available to be able to see where the naturalization, if it did occur, when it occurred. So again, this is similar. You can see alien on the end. This is somebody, Anthony Bruzza, is here for 20 years. He was here, immigrated in 1880. He was 15 years old when he came. And he's an alien in 1900. So he hasn't, so obviously he's been here a while, did not start when he came in 1880. He's been here for 20 years and he's still considered an alien. Okay. 1910 census, you will see the status has changed. The designation says PA, that is not Pennsylvania, folks, that is first papers. And that is the process. That's the beginning of the process. This man, Frank Bruzza, has declared his intention to naturalize. That's a declaration only. That does not mean he's naturalized in 1910. That means he started the process. Again, like I said, lots of things start and stop the process, but then it's got to go through the timeline. I know somebody that started it, and then one decade or one census says PA, the next census says AL, the following census says NA, And so, which is going to be the next status, and that means something happened in between where he lost it. So here, this is the 1920 census. This shows an example of the husband and wife, Raphael and Louise Cioffi, both coming from Italy, immigrating a year apart, and so 1913, and the status important is the year, is the NA, which means naturalized. So if this is your family, you're going to be looking at the previous 1910 census to see if any papers were started, or if it said AL, because it could be in the middle that they started the process and you wouldn't see that. So you want to then look at the 1930 census, the 1940 census, to make sure that everything is the same going forward. You want to confirm that you have the right line. And if you've confirmed that, then you can assume if 1910 is alien and 1920 is NA for naturalized, that sometime in the 19-teens, this couple, or at least each of them, became naturalized citizens somewhere within that decade. Okay, so this is a schema. Obviously, these are going to be given to, this information will be provided to you about where to find information, which court. The first thing I would check would be to start with is checking Family Search or Ancestry.com. They will have, and they do have, at least census records. They also will give, if the information is digitized, there could be actually naturalization paperwork. So it could happen, naturalization could happen at a couple of different locations, either on the local non-federal court or the federal court system. And so you'll be able to tell, you're going to be looking for if it's in like a specific Hampshire County, Suffolk County, or it's going to be in like the Supreme Court in Massachusetts, things like that, the Federal Court of Boston. So when did they naturalize? So each going down, each stack contains the same date ranges, and it's basically going to go through as to where to find them. In general, you are going to be looking through National Archives, at least like it could be in the county itself. It could be the local archive, or the NARA archive, which would be for Massachusetts. A lot of the times in some parts of New England, you will find that there's the National Archives in Waltham will have records of naturalization from courts. For my grandfather, he naturalized in the Common Pleas Court of Waterbury. And when I contacted that court to find out kind of where the records were, they said in the 1980s that all those records were then sent off to NARA in Waltham. And then Lisa told me where I needed to go to find them. The dates are going to tell you as to where they would be potentially located, both federal and non-federal. So this is just I'm not going to go through this. This is just information that you can utilize as you're starting to determine if you do find out that they've been naturalized, how to begin the process. USCIS is going to be, it's a website, it's the government website. You can do a genealogy program research, and that will, you're going to provide as much information. If you don't know exactly where, or you're trying to determine more information, if you're unclear about naturalization, you can have a request done. Everything is online. You can pay online. It takes a while. It could take up to a year for them to respond. But if there is something on file, they will provide you everything within the file of your ancestor, and it would probably be like their alien file. So it could give you even more information in addition to the naturalization information as well. Okay, so to get these documents, the United States Citizenship and Immigration Service, that's the USCIS, it's roughly now, currently it's about 12 months to process this from beginning to end. And you're going to be looking for all information that would identify, to give you information about your immigrant ancestor. But it will give you, all kinds of information: aliases, dates of immigration, dates of birth. There could be specific, like people will write affidavits about your ancestor. So it's really, really interesting. If the USCIS states that there's no record, then you're going to need to request a certificate of non-existence. So the part about naturalization for the process of citizenship for Italy is that you have to determine whether your ancestor naturalized or not. If they naturalized, you have to get there's the three documents: the declaration of intention, the petition to naturalize, and the oath of allegiance. That will come when you do this USCIS search, and you're gonna be able to request that and get that information. That will be certified. You need that. That will move forward. If they did not naturalize, you need to have a certificate of non-existence, record of non-existence to move it forward, because you can't just say, well, I didn't find anything. That means they must not have naturalized. They're going to say, you need to give me you need to give me the proof that the government says no, and that's what that is. Without that, you basically you don't know. So you need the government to say yes, and here's the document, or no, and here's the document. Obviously, the two different, we talked about the local repository and the National Archives, both regional in Boston, and then of course the National Archives in Washington, D.C. But usually the ones in Waltham will be pretty helpful. One second. Okay, so here's a certificate of naturalization. This is actually what the immigrant would get as kind of like something you would frame and put on the wall or have as a keepsake. Gives information about the immigrant, statistical body, his age, his weight, his height, his eye color, his hair color, any markings if he's married or she, and what the former nationality was, and then basically the statistical information about where this naturalization took place, what court, what date, who the judge was, everything that's on there. Again, the seal is there, the photograph is there. They're really nice. If you have them, you might have them in your file. You might have a copy of this. That's really important, because then you know for sure you have the information that you need, and then you have to request the right set of documents to prove that as a part of the long form for the naturalization, having it certified. But if you have this is really helpful, because then your research is so much done as far as naturalization goes. But that's only part. The only part.
Sorry, I think this is where
this is you.
Yeah,
Okay, I was like, I think this is you.
This
Okay,
is right. So as Mark said, you're not done. If you've got
that's just one. That's one step.
That's the first step. You've got the naturalization. If you don't have the document, at least you know the dates, and allows you to move forward. So now we're going to talk really about the process and kind of what else you're going to need and what you might encounter along the path. While many people here their primary residence may be Massachusetts, so you would be affiliated with the Boston consulate. If you're not, if your primary residence is outside of New England or in Connecticut, etc., you would be affiliated with another consulate. And we just mentioned this because from our experiences, sometimes the process is different from consulate to consulate. Sometimes the documents that are being requested or how they're being requested may be different, and it will come down to the person. In many cases, it'll come down to the person who is evaluating and looking at your application. Right now, and this is true of any consulate, you can find the required documents listed on the website, and we'll go through that as well, because it's it can be kind of daunting. So again, as Mark talked about, we're talking about category 3 now, so we're only going back 2 generations. Well, I shouldn't say that, 2 generations for me. You will need to get Italian birth certificates. So those would be available in the comune, in the municipality of the place, the town where your grandparent, grandfather, grandmother came from. You will also need their marriage certificate. Marriage could have taken place in Italy, in which case you'll also get that from the comune. If it took place in the United States, you would get that from the state in which the marriage took place. Let's see, I'm going to jump down here. If you've got your paternal and your maternal grandfather's naturalization certificates, or some other kind of document that says there's no record, a cone. You would also need their death certificates if that were applicable. I'll get into the apostille and translation in a second. You will need your father's certified birth certificate. Again, that comes from the state in which the event occurred. You would need your mother's birth certificate. You will need their marriage certificate, and you would need your birth certificate. And you can see here that in some cases, the documents need to be translated. So anything that you gather that was not issued from Italy needs to be translated. If there is there's an exception to that. Now that Boston has got an exception, is that you only need the translations for the line, for the inline. So what inline would mean, and I'm just going to use me as an example. I needed to, so I went back to my grandfather born in Sicily, my father born in Boston, and me born in Boston. I needed to get those documents, my father's birth certificate, his marriage certificate, my birth certificate, my father's death certificate, all translated into Italian. My mother's birth certificate, it was not necessary for me to get that translated into Italian. All documents, however, do need to get an apostille, and everyone's always a little confused, and it took me a while to understand what the apostille is. It's verifying the authenticity of the document, and it is a completely separate document. We have a picture of it coming up. But it's a completely separate document. You need to get that from the Secretary of State's office, that's associated with the document that you have, whether it's a birth certificate or a marriage certificate. So in the case, again, I'll use myself as an example. My parents were both born in Boston, married in Massachusetts. I was able to go to the Secretary of State's office in Massachusetts and get the apostilles for those documents. So by the end, you will have a stack of documents. So there are a number of ways to go about getting documents. If you physically can get to either the state office for a record, to request a record, or the Secretary of State's office to get an apostille, that's completely possible. I did a little bit of that myself. But because I was doing a lot of my document gathering during COVID, I used VitalCheck, which is a website which they will charge you, processing fee, etc. But you don't have to travel, and you will get the document. You check the boxes, the state that the event occurred, who you're looking for, birth certificate, marriage certificate, that you need it for dual citizenship, because you want the long form, and then they'll just send it to you. So that's a simple website that you can essentially get any document, aside from naturalization documents, but any documents for events that took place, life events that took place in the United States.
And just
Italy,
because we're in, I was going to say, just to add for New York, if it's New York, it just adds it's not quite as easy. Let's put it that way. It's a little bit more challenging. So you can go to VitalCheck, but you may not be able to request certain records based upon where they're created, and based upon how you're related to that person. So it's going to be important that you're going to have to check different areas to make sure you have the authority to request them. Some states, they don't have a problem. New York has usually a lot more restrictions for privacy, and so you have to jump with New York. I mean, there's hoops for everything, but those are bigger hoops. It's always a hoop.
Right. Well, I'll just, a little side story. I was searching for my mother's birth certificate. My mother's Albanian, and went online, newer name, newer birth date, etc. And they kept coming back. We have no record. We have no record. We have no record. Probably about a week later, I get a phone call saying, we think we found it. The name written on my mother's birth certificate was Alan, not Ellen. So these are the sorts of things I talked about, you know, I sort of mentioned at the beginning, you sort of discover these things along the way. But then that required a separate step. I then had to go down to Boston City Hall with my 93-year-old mother to get her birth certificate amended. So these are the sorts of things that as you go through the process, you're going to find spelling differences, date differences on documents. Most of these events, certainly early on, were recorded, like you know, coming into the United States, they were recorded by a non-Italian, you know, an English speaker who was not understanding Italian, and Italian who's not speaking
Mhm,
English, which
mhm,
led to a lot of
mhm.
names being spelled differently from what you might find on the birth certificate in Italy. So those are just some of the ways
Yeah.
that names
The
got
thing,
changed.
yeah, the thing just to remember, just in general, to save yourself some anxiety around that, is that you're dealing with people, and people make mistakes all the time. Things get transcribed incorrectly, they get written incorrectly, the document gets created, but the original information was recorded correctly, and when they created your document, it was flipped. Anything could happen when you're dealing with some, you know, in other than if it's a transcription, it's easy to have that be a mistake. So the important thing for you is just to remember to check all the documents. You're going to need to make sure you eliminate anything for them to say, are you sure this is your person? Because you're showing me two different surnames. Both of those surnames are common Italian names. How do I know, as the Italian consulate, to be able to ensure that this is the same? So your job is to ensure that they're the same, and it may mean that you have to try and attempt to fix documents that are misspelled or have errors. Will you be successful all the time? No. And if you're not, then you just say, okay, agency in Boston, I need a letter certified to state that I made the request and it is impossible for me to adjust the spelling of this document based upon whatever reason you told me. And that becomes some proof, at least the country of Italy sees that you made the attempt. But again, they're really hard. You can really get so negative around the spelling because and I fell trapped to it, but you have to be kind to everybody, even yourself, because it's really a difficult process to go through that, because you're going to see names that you're like, this is a slam dunk, and you're like, how could they have spelled it like this? And so the how can you have spelled it like this means now you've got something to be working on to try and
Yeah.
Hey,
repair it.
Mark, could I give my little story?
Sure, of course.
Yes,
Or
I think your
just
story is a very, yes, yours will bring levity to the group. Not that it sounds, not, it's a heavy group, but
so in 1913, my grandparents, Gaetano Spera and Antonia Pizzichillo, went to the county clerk in Denver, Colorado to get married. And the county clerk, his name was Ben Stapleton. If you've ever flown into the Denver International Airport before it became that, it was called Stapleton Airport. He eventually became the mayor of the city. And he was also a member of the KKK who didn't like Italians, didn't like Catholics, in addition to blacks and other members of other races. But at any rate, my grandparents were married. They made my grandfather the bride and called him Kate, and they made my grandmother the groom, called her Antonio. So I only found this out because there was an enterprising reporter uh, there from the Rocky Mountain News who reported it in the newspaper, and it came up in a newspapers.com search. So they had to get married again by somebody else. But suffices to say, there was a long line of name variations, which I had to take care of with an affidavit to link all the one and the same together. So, any rate,
Thank you, Jerry.
yeah,
things like that can
he
happen.
went
We've
from
all had those,
Gaetano to
we've all
Kite,
had
and then
those
Kite
stories.
became Kate. Yeah, so it's
Yes,
definitely,
right.
you
And
just
it
don't know the
eventually became
stories.
Clyde.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, and then Clyde. Yeah, yeah. He should have just
Um,
stuck with Gaetano. It's a lot
I
easier.
know, it was perfect.
yeah.
Just an easy name.
Yeah, as Jerry just mentioned, and we've talked about, you may have affidavits, you may have some to do some other step. You may need to acquire additional documents. again, just to ensure that the consulate is satisfied with you demonstrating that the line has not been broken and that you in fact are from this father, from this grandfather, etc. Once you've had your appointment, you may find that you have more homework to do. They may not be satisfied completely with what you have provided. And they will ask you to go back and present something else to them. Fortunately, you don't have to make another appointment for that. You can just email that document to them once you've come, or once you've been able to provide it. So this is just an interesting thing that we've only recently learned, because this came up on a previous two presentations ago. The question was asked at the Boston consulate, because this was not a practice at the Boston consulate, but was a practice, I believe, in the New York consulate, about piggybacking appointments and documents. So once a line is established in a consulate, the additional family members do not need to go back and reestablish that line. So, example, my brother, my nephew, and I all had different appointments. My brother had the earliest appointment, and at that point, the line was established that my father was born to my grandfather, et cetera, et cetera. So I was not necessary for me to go back and prove all of that. They had that on file, and they were able to use that. Unfortunately, I didn't learn that, or I think that changed after, because I pulled everything together. I didn't want to take any chances. I had all my documents, I had duplicates of everything, and I wanted to be sure that I had it. But going forward, I have confirmed this with the consulate that you can use the line, and then you don't have to, the third or fourth or fifth person doesn't have to collect everything the way the first person might. But that only goes for the same consulate. If you have family members living outside of New England or in Connecticut, they need to establish the line in that consulate. So all of the documents would need to be gathered in order to establish it. You can also now piggyback appointments. So if you have an appointment in December 2025 and some of your family members within the line in the same consulate have appointments in 2026, you can request that you all can have a appointment together, but everybody has to have an appointment. It can't be someone who's not got an appointment yet. You've got to have everybody has got to have an appointment already within the reservation system. I'm just going to go back. So with the apostille, as I mentioned, it's not a stamp. It's provided by the Secretary of State's office. They do this all the time. I did many of them by mail. And all your original inline documents are going to require an apostille. Your inline original documents then also must be translated into Italian, and there are several translators that you can find online. I used someone in Newton that was great. So that's another step that you'd have to. The apostille does not require a translation, nor does the naturalization document, nor does anything that's been issued from Italy. So, whoops. So this is an apostille. So just so you can see what it looks like. It is a completely separate document. It's stapled. As Mark mentioned, we had a presentation last night. Don't unstaple it, because then you have completely negated the authenticity. So even though it's stapled and it makes it hard for you to make a copy of the document that's attached, make sure it stays stapled. I will also say that not all apostilles look like this. I had to get something, I can't remember, as my daughter's birth certificate from Oregon, and the apostille looks different than the Massachusetts one. So just so you know that there's different ways of doing things depending on the states.
The one thing that's the same is that you're going to be requesting an apostille for the country of Italy. every state secretary of
Yeah,
state
thank you.
will require you to notify or designate on the form when you apply which country you were doing in the apostille for, and you have to tell them it's Italy. How they look between states is different as their flags still between states. They're going to be their requirements, their payments, they'll all be different. But the long and short of it is when you get your apostille, keep it on there. It's now part of the certificate. And regardless of how Massachusetts or Connecticut or Vermont looks, they're all going to be valid based upon their state.
So making an appointment, we've talked about Boston and its jurisdiction, the states that it covers. Sorry, we just did this presentation last night. We were talking to Vermonters mostly, but if you need to find out where your consulate is, you can just check the Washington website. You will need to create an account and in the reservation system, which is Prenotami. And recommend that you do that right away. The Boston reservation and appointments are quite far out, and they are now scheduling for 2029 for your appointments. It may take you 3 to 5 years to get all your documents, depending on what you have to do.
Yeah.
But we are very, very backed up.
Yeah. So what I would tell people honestly is, normally I would tell people figure out, like, don't waste your time making an appointment because you'll get one pretty quickly. This is all obviously pre-COVID lingo here. And when you determine you're eligible, then make an appointment. Now, what I'm telling people is, if you're at all interested in getting your citizenship in Italy, make an appointment. You don't even know whether you have a 1948 case or not. Just make the appointment. Try to make the appointment. I actually go on the Prenotami, which is not quite what that is. It's a little bit more than that, but
Yeah.
It's on the website, on the Boston Consulate website, and any website for the consulate. So go to that website, create an account for you, and start trying to get an appointment. Do not wait until your documents are in hand, because you might have all your documents and now you're waiting 6 years before you can make an appointment. And then it may be another 2 years before you get recognized. So do them all together, always trying to get your appointment. That's going to be your number one goal. If you find that you can't do this, or you don't have a valid line, then you stop. But if you were able to get an appointment and you found you can't use it, you can let it go. Somebody else will be, you'll make someone's day by, paying it forward to somebody who's also looking to get an appointment. But I would be trying to do that, in all honesty. Do not wait to think you're being more, kind of good with your time. It's better to use that time in tandem with getting documents pulled, or actually in tandem with determining if your line is eligible. And if you do find that your line is eligible, then you're going to be pulling documents and continuing to try and get appointments at the consulate.
So this is just we'll talk about a little bit. One of the resources that we're going to direct you to is the U.S. dual citizenship Italian Facebook page. There are about 60,000 people, 62,000 people.
62,000. I looked last night. 62,000.
62.7 or something like that.
Oh wow! It went up. It was 62.4 last night. It was 62.7. Yeah. It goes up quickly.
This is a tracking report, and this is self-reported tracking. So someone in the Facebook group, one of the administrators, has taken it upon herself to track the appointments and status of people who are applying through Boston. So you can, if you can see this, actually, there are, all the red are people who have had an appointment, but have not have received their recognition. You can also see in this column notes that many of these people have homework to do, so that they had their appointment. Jerry Carbone is right here, September 14, 2023. He has a homework assignment. I'm actually down here somewhere, if I remember. But anyway, you can see what the wait times are, and it's a really frustrating part of this process. New York, New York and Philadelphia, I've been hearing that things are speeding up a little bit there. But I will say overall, the consulates are overwhelmed by the number of
Mhm,
requests. There are a lot of people who are seeking their recognition. And
correct.
they're not staffed up to have appointments all day long. So this is part of the reason that things are so backed up.
Yeah, and so for New York, they have a wait list, and wait lists are so my cousin, I got him on the wait list the day the wait list was created in April of 22, and I was just going through email today. His appointment was he got granted an appointment January of 24, which is about 21 months, later. But he got a notification in October of 23 that his appointment was coming up in January. So it was a good solid 18 months on the wait list when the wait list was created. And for New York, people can't even get on the wait list. They just can't even get on. They've stopped just booking wait list appointments. I think just for sheer, I think people would just be out of their mind if they got waitlisted and they're going to 2032. I mean, it'd be like I don't know what the date is, but there's so many people in all of these areas that you have to be diligent about getting onto the consulate. Boston used to have a game where you could do it at a certain time once a month. That's gone. I don't think anybody has it's the luck of the draw. If somebody just happens to back out and you're just there and all of a sudden you get an appointment, count yourself, thank your lucky stars you got one, because it doesn't normally happen. But you just never know. So you just have to be diligent. I mean, I would probably do it late in the night, early in the middle of the night, if you're going to be doing that, just to see if you can, get an appointment, because what did you say, Lisa? Your nephew maybe got an appointment probably during the eclipse. So
Yes.
it's, who knows when things, crazy things have been known to happen. So I would definitely not give up hope. There are other ways around citizenship and getting through this, and not necessarily going through the consulates. There's ways to use an Italian lawyer because the consulates are backed up. Typically, that path is for 1948 cases, but now more and more people are opting to use that as a pathway forward. And that pathway offers other options. So consulates, you can only do one at a time. You can only piggyback once everybody has an appointment in one consulate, but that's assuming everybody has an appointment, and then you can group them together. With a lawyer, you can have people in one common line from different parts of the country, all in one petition, assuming the line is valid, and move it forward. And then it goes to a local provincial judge instead of the national judge, or the courts in Rome. And the court system is a little bit more open in the provincial level. And so court appointments are a little bit easier to get, but then you have a lawyer representing you and your petition with everybody involved. Once the judge grants the petition, then everybody gets recognized in one group as citizens, and then you're all able to be, you'll get registered and then be able to get passports and move forward. Obviously, that costs money, like anything else. There's another way to go through, and that's going to be through residency, and that could be months to up to a year of not working, living in Italy and taking residence. And then as a resident, then you can petition to go through the comune or the town to actually become a citizen that way. Obviously, people just have to have the luxury of having enough time and money to be able to just kind of take 6 months to 12 months out of their lives and just kind of live in Italy and, I don't know, do what you do, live. But you can't really do any work, or you can't make any money. So it's a little bit more of a challenge, but that is also another way to do that. But consulate definitely is a challenge. If anyone has been in this working with this area so far, trying to get appointments, do understand the struggle that it poses. But this Facebook group is really helpful because there's
Yeah, the
lots of
Facebook group
people,
is very helpful.
lots of people that can give you a lot of solace and ideas of how to move forward.
So we talked about the timeline. Costs really vary depending on the number of documents that you need. The states range in terms of the cost for apostilles, translations, etc., the application. I think my total might have been $1,500 or so. That does not include my travel to Boston and hotels and things of that sort, but you know, you may have to do some traveling. So, you know, I don't want to quote any cost at all, but you just expect that you're going to be paying for everything that you request. There's a price tag associated with it. So once you've had your appointment, you get your appointment, you show up at the consulate, you present all your documents. That appointment can take an hour and a half, depends. They generally, Boston does 3 appointments a day, I think, 2 appointments 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Your application fee, they go through your documents with a fine-tooth comb. It's in English. People are concerned that they're going to be speaking Italian. They do not. The appointment is in English. Then you will wait. If they don't send you home with any homework, then you wait. Verification is with your comune. Again, the place of birth of the ancestor the line that you're following. Then you'll get an email, and the email essentially says, congratulations, your citizenship has been recognized. Now you need to, you know, register in the AIR system. The AIR system captures all of your life events as a newly recognized Italian citizen. So if you move, if you get married, if you get divorced, if you have a child, all of those events then need to be recorded into the system, which is all online. Then you'll be able to make your passport appointment. That can be made again if you're in the Boston area. You can make that appointment in Boston. The Springfield, there's an honorary consulate now in Springfield, which you can go to for your passport. So that's an option. They do not do citizenship appointments, but you can do a passport there. And then you walk away with your passport, and that can be another month or 2 months after you've been recognized.
So one of the things the chat came up.
Yeah.
Your appointment's done, you're waiting a year. You can start asking questions, but they tell you, truly, they give you 2 years. They have up to 2 years. So, you know, if you know people in the consulate people that you know that have gone through it and they're finding out it's less than 2 years or you're coming up, you could start, but it's really hard. You can ask the comune, have you heard anything? They are at no obligation to give you any information about it. So they won't, you know, of course they're not, they are Italian. They do things on Italian timeline. So it's not like, you know, I need this yesterday. It's like, it's not that important. They will, you know, they'll be on holiday. You know, it's really hard when you're stuck and you're approaching August and you're like, okay, the whole country shut down for August. I have to start my request and my actions for asking, you know, September. So again, it's 2 years. You can start to ask questions, but again, you may not get any response, but it doesn't hurt to ask. But I would be mindful that you don't want to become a nudge with them because they're going to remember you and you don't want them to remember you for the wrong reasons. You want them to remember you for the good ones.
So again, create your your account on the Prenotami website. Try to schedule your appointment. And Mark said, start, trying to confirm your eligibility. I tell everybody to print off the instructions that are on the website because it just becomes confusing and you just want to, just good to keep something to just continue to refer to. If you have to do genealogy research if you're unclear about names, etc., that will take time. Create a spreadsheet, and I've got an example of a spreadsheet on here that I'll show you in a second. And just start collecting. Get yourself a nice waterproof folder and start putting all of your documents in that. This is actually this website, this presentation will be online, so it'll be on our website by tomorrow. So you can pull down any of these documents, but this is just an example of how to keep track of some of the documents that you're collecting, because it can get long and confusing. And even when you think you have everything, and I had to do triple and quadruple checks all the time because I panicked that, oh, I thought I had it and I did have it, but I was confused. So anyway, a spreadsheet helps. All of your resources can be found on the consulate websites, the Facebook group, as we mentioned. Mark and Jerry and I can also be resources to you. The Vermont Italian Cultural Association has resources posted on our page. Our emails are here. And that concludes our talking. And I know, Jerry, it looks like you had quite a few chats as I'm looking up in the chat box. But we can open it up. I think if you want to, Jerry, if there's any questions in there that you weren't able to answer, and then we probably have 15 minutes or so for additional questions. Jerry, are you on mute? You're on mute.
Yes, there were several, and let me try to find one of these here. It was a three-part question. Okay. I wonder, maybe I could share this so you could see it or
Sure.
not.
You want me to stop
Let's see if I-
sharing and then you can share?
Okay, let's try it that way.
Okay.
Let me see here. Notes maybe here. Well, heck, I don't see it now. You know what? I think it's actually in the chat. Let's see. I guess I can't share the chat, can I?
Okay, I don't think so.
No, okay. So let me see if I can just read it to you. Well, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah, why don't you go on and
All
see
right, well,
if,
why don't we
find
see
it.
if there's someone who has some questions, and then Jerry, while
Yeah,
you're
I can
searching.
look for it.
Yeah, that's fine. I noticed you had like 64.
Actually, it's Donald Tarallo. Donald is, maybe Donald could ask the question.
Oh, thank you. Hi, Jerry.
Hi.
Yeah, I actually started this process a couple years ago and I got a little bit discouraged, but I just had a few questions. Thank you for the presentation, by the way. So because my grandmother was born prior to 1948, I was told I couldn't even bother with the U.S., the Italian consulate in Boston, and that I needed to, hire a lawyer through Rome. So I just wanted to.
Let's talk about that one, because that doesn't sound, you've got information that sounds initially crooked. So I think, so do me a favor and set up your family for us. So you're talking about your grandmother. So would it be your great grandfather? Is it her father that's the immigrant?
Yeah, he became an immigrant, and he was an American citizen after she was born.
Okay, so your great grandfather was born in Italy, came to America. He got married either here or there,
In
but
Italy.
he's married. Okay. And then started having children. Your grandmother is one of the children he had. What year was your grandmother born?
1908.
1908. Okay. And then your great grandfather naturalized in what year?
1926.
Okay. Okay. So now we have to look at, so so it's not the birth of the child of the immigrant that considers it to be 1948. It's the birth of the child of the child, so the grandchild of the immigrant, when it comes to women. So, so this is your grandmother. So how do you descend from her?
Through my father,
Okay, and what year was your father born?
1946.
Okay, so in that case, that's a 1948 case, not because of your grandmother being born in 1908, because your grandmother potentially was still, so the thing around 1948 is that your grandmother was technically would be still alive in 1948, and she then could pass on her citizenship to your father, but you have to have a lawyer to refute the law that states that your father couldn't just naturally obtain the citizenship without having to do this. So if your grandmother had, say, an uncle born in 1949, then that uncle would automatically be considered non-1948 because his birth would happen after 48. It's not going to be the child of the immigrant.
Right,
It's
right.
usually the grandchildren when it comes to that. So here's an example in my family. My grandfather was born in 1887, and his youngest daughter was born in 1918. So you think, okay, this is a 1948 case. My aunt did not get married until 1951, and all of my cousins were born in the 50s. So they were, because she married later in her life and had her children after 1948, all of my cousins would qualify as citizens, as one of them just got recognized in September through my line because my aunt was able to pass on her citizenship to her children that were born after 1948. So you're 46, which is, I mean, there's no like saying, well, you're only 2 years, you should have a better, it's still a 1948 case. So a couple of things have changed in the summer of 2022. You do not need to petition the court in Rome. It would go to the provincial court. So where is this line? Do you know what part of Italy this line is going to? Your great grandfather, what town or what province? Do you know?
Azzano outside of Naples.
Okay, so Naples. So is it the province of Naples or is it one of the provinces around Naples?
I
You
have to
said
look on the document, but
okay.
it's
So
close to Naples. Yeah.
so yeah, so if it's in any of the provinces, so it would be it's a regional court. It would be a provincial court. And you would have to hire an Italian lawyer. It doesn't go through Rome anymore. The lawyer could be anywhere in Italy to make that happen. And so basically you have to have representation. The good thing, Donald, for you is that you have the ability to now, assuming that you might have other family members that might be interested, but are kind of crestfallen because you have this 1948 case that's loomed over all of you. The good thing about a 1948 case in the sense is you have the opportunity to then include everybody into that case, into that petition. All of your cousins, all of your siblings, anybody that would fall under your grandmother. Or it could be, depending on how big you want it to be, it becomes unwielding. It becomes harder to do when you have your parents, cousins, kids. I mean, it's just a lot of people if you don't know them, but you could include immediate family, nieces and nephews and they could be living anywhere in the country. And if the case gets taken up and gets approved and it gets defended where the judge it gets overturned, because they do overturn those. It's not like it's an absolute no. Then everybody gets recognized. So, but the only way forward for you to do that is through the courts. And that's because of your father's birth.
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah.
Do you have to then disprove all the other lines? Because I have several lines that
Okay.
could work, but because of
Yeah. So
mixed up
what I would,
certificates and
yeah.
bad dates and people obviously became naturalized before someone was born.
Yeah.
Those
So
have to
what
be
you would want to
disproved?
do is, yeah. So and that's another blessing you might have. I would be looking at every line every possible Italian. I mean, as long as you have Italians in your line, if you're Italian on both your mother and your father's side, you're going to want to look at every line possible, because you might have it. You may have a line that's not a 1948 case, and the
No.
lawyer may want you to have as many lines as possible for them to say, look, there's all of these lines. They all happen to be in the same scenario, but they're all valid because of the 1948 case. The more you have, sometimes the better it is to show and to prove that. So but you definitely would not just want to go with one when you have other ones. I mean, if you have ones that are truly like knocked out because someone naturalized before the birth of the American born child, then you can't use those. But if you have any that don't, you might have two 1948 cases. You may want to be pursuing both of them just to be able, because the judge may want either one of them or both of them to move forward depending upon where the documentation took place.
I just
one-
checked, Arzano is in Napoli,
Yeah.
Provincia di
It's Napoli. Okay, so it'd be in Naples.
I have one potential jus sanguis, but because of the misaligning birth dates with my great grandfather and his naturalization here in the U.S., the birth dates are all mixed up. I couldn't possibly make the dates align. I went to
Yeah, well, so the naturalization paperwork sometimes is a little bit goofy. You cannot amend a naturalization document
right. Yeah.
through a consulate. But you know, the one thing you can state is, you know, there's more on a naturalization document than just his date. There's going to be his wife, his children, all of their dates. There's going to be things that you could potentially use to say this is, you know, in spite of this date being wrong on this document, you could prove a case in front of a judge here, to get someone to make some kind of a decree or some kind of a ruling to say this is the same person, that all of these dates, all of these people, you know, you have all of you set it up. I mean, you have to think almost lawyerly, like you have to almost, you're trying to prove and disprove things, but you're trying to prove what you have, all points. So you know that it's the same, you know that there's a mistake, but you can talk to the mistake. You can say, you know, the date may be wrong, but this is my father, and here are all the children. You can, like, I give you the birth certificates of all of my aunts and uncles, and this is everybody. This is everyone that's here. It all points to the same guy. It's, you know, so you could make it so it becomes less and less problematic. Do you need to, if it's not a 1948 case, you may find that that's definitely a pathway you're going to want to pursue. But just because you have a date that's out of sync on a naturalization, you could easily refute that and show other reasons to show why that date is just kind of a misnomer. Jerry knows that as well.
Happened to me, yeah. My grandfather's birth is January 8th, 1894. The naturalization record said February 8th. So we had to get the Comune to do a positivo negativo search to prove that there was no Gaetano Sparrow born on February 8th. And so that proves that his birthday was January 8th.
I
So
do
how
the
do you-
same thing too.
So how do you
Yeah.
find lawyers over there and people to get, you know, the positivos and the negativos, or do you do them?
Go ahead, Lisa. You can make the statement.
That's
So I'm not saying it.
Mark can be helpful.
I could be helpful.
Mark can be helpful.
Yeah,
sure.
Mark knows
if
people.
you can, I know people. Yeah.
This is what Mark does.
I'll-
No, I would
That's part
definitely
of,
use
that's
Mark's
part of
email.
what yeah. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not, by all means, everyone, I'm not trying
He's
to
not
do
searching for
anything to,
clients, but he wants to be
Mhm.
helpful, so.
yeah, but I mean, you know, I could just state this. My business partner and I, that associate with Vika, as members, we have an association with an Italian lawyer who does dual citizenship. And so, you know, if you're in a position where you're like, I don't see a pathway forward, or I have a true 1948 case and I don't even know the first steps about how to go forward with that, I'll put my email in the chat, or
Thank you.
Jerry, if you want to do that, well, I can do that.
Yeah.
I'm right here.
Yeah.
So, but I normally would not do that, but I just want to put that down, you know, because I don't want people to feel so discouraged that they don't know how to move forward with this, because there is a path forward, even for people if they're trying to do consulate work, and they've been trying. And we had someone last night, she literally said every day since September she's been trying, and it's truly disheartening, because people are so passionate and they want this, and they don't know any other way to get around it. They do make special circumstances for people that can't get appointments because the consulates are backed up, that the courts are allowing those people then to petition the courts. But of course, then you're paying a lawyer in lawyer fees. But it's in there. If you want to chat with me, we could easily just have a conversation to move it forward.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
May I ask a quick question before we sign off, just because we're 22 minutes
Sure.
in? Do you guys have a moment or two, or is everyone jumping off?
There's also Dan McCafferty has had a hand up for a long time.
Oh,
So
Yeah, that's right. I
wanna
just see
point
that.
that out.
And so
Yeah.
does William.
First of
But
all,
Lauren, we'll get
this
back
is
to you.
sure. Sorry, Lauren.
Go ahead.
Hi, this is Dan McCafferty. First of all, thank you to the three of you for putting this on and for your support of the Fitchburg State Italian Center. My wife's a senior person at Fitchburg, and I'm attending in her absence. First question. My wife's uncle successfully gained dual citizenship. Her father passed away prior to, I'm not sure if he applied or I know he had an intention. I don't know if he actually started the process, but obviously we have all the documents from her uncle. Is it possible that she would be eligible for dual citizenship?
Yeah, there's no reason if a person, so everybody in my line was deceased. My grandfather and my father are both deceased. I was the only living one going forward. Even my aunt, my cousin that got hers, her mother was deceased. The person being alive or not is irrelevant. So if he was going to but didn't, you're just collecting his documents to just prove the line going forward to her. So and if you've already proven the line and it's the same immigrant ancestor that her uncle gained citizen, then the line is valid. And then you should be able to go through that. There's not a problem with that.
Okay. Now he would have done that at a consulate somewhere in California. Would that be at that line and documentation be accessible by the consulate in Boston, perhaps?
No,
No.
not necessarily. They won't pull it from California. So just know that you're able to use the information, and you'll have to replicate it for Boston because they don't share that between consulates. So they don't share files like that. But knowing that the line is valid, knowing that if he was able to achieve citizenship through work, then you're just going to have to replicate the steps. But that could also mean other people could, once it's valid and validated here in Boston, that anyone could then use your work to go forward. Obviously, that becomes part of the issue with the consulate is that, once it's in one part of the country, unless you don't live there, it's stuck. And people aren't going to move to Southern California. You would never get an appointment in Southern California. It's just, it's virtually impossible. It was bad enough before COVID. They were at least 6 to 8 years out in that time frame. So,
wow. Hey, one last question. So if she gets her dual citizenship, am I left behind and she's going to move to Italy and I'll be a bachelor?
no. So the
Depends on when you're
year,
married.
so yeah, the year of marriage is important for marriage, for juris matrimonius. It's July, Jerry, 1984. I think, I'm not sure, July 27th. There's a specific date. I don't know the significance of the date, but July of 1984. If you're married before that date, the language requirement is not a requirement for the spouse. If you're married after that date, then the spouse has to pass an intermediate test. And there's like a course and there's a thing you have to do to do that in addition to the other pieces. If you're married more than 3 years, living outside of Italy, then you qualify that you can petition. Once she's a citizen, then you can go through that. In your process to become a citizen, which includes a background check and a bunch of other things, is much more like hers will literally be a dot matrix printed letter that gets emailed to you that looks like so uneventful. You've poured your blood, sweat, and tears to get this, and it's basically a recognition letter But you get like a banner that you wear, a red, white, and green banner, and you're a sash, and you get like, basically like a laureate, and it's a big pomp and circumstance. You make the oath, and it's a big, big, big deal. So for you, it'll be a really big deal because it's, you becoming one that you didn't have the bloodline. So you're actually becoming a dual in that
Wow.
way. But you can,
Terrific. Thanks for your time.
sure. I know, William, you've
William
had your
had his
hand up
hand up.
as much.
William, Brett.
Yeah. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yep. Yeah, you're good.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, there is just something I am fundamentally not understanding
Okay.
about women in this process. Basically, I'll try to keep it brief, but all the Italians in my family are on my mother's side.
Mm-hmm.
And I've said it. Oh, I've said it a few times, probably in chat. But like so a man I'm trying to get my ancestry from is my second great grandfather on
Okay.
my mother's side.
Okay.
So he was born the 29th of July, 1879, and
Okay.
died on the 25th of May, 1958. The
Okay.
person who I'm descended from is his daughter, my great grandmother,
Okay.
who also was born the 15th of June, 1914, and she passed away the 12th of December, 2010.
Okay.
Where I'm getting real hung up is on grandmother, and he was born in 43. So
Okay.
what I'm saying is that like what so I'm sorry, I'm getting real tripped up in my words here.
Just let me, maybe, William, it might be better to explain that in a email, and then we could address it more efficiently, I think.
Yes, I should.
Then we can think about it too, because I think you're right, it's complicated. And
It's a lot of I've done a lot of my own personal research over these last couple of years, and
yeah,
like it's a lot of paperwork involved, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
real glad I got someone to help me. I
Yeah.
won't take up any
So-
more time, but
yeah,
basically,
no, I just think it might
But
be
I-
more, yeah.
yeah, but what I
Okay.
want to ask is actually something going back to my second great grandfather. So he arrived in 1896, and
Mhm.
I've looked at the 1910 census,
Mhm.
and it says like on his document, he made his declaration of intention on August 5th, 1908.
Okay.
But on the 1910 census, it said he was naturalized. But I also look on a 1920 census,
Mm-hmm.
and it still says papers. And last I have his oath of allegiance document, and he was basically sworn to officially become a naturalized citizen on the 9th of January 1939. So
Okay.
I'm basically sitting here and asking what gives. So
Yeah. So
if it is clear.
the census records, although they are helpful, are also full of errors. The
Mhm.
earlier census records, other than 1940 has a designated person that is the informant. The 1900 through 1930 census, it could be the neighbor that says, oh yeah, he's naturalized, and then the next year he's not naturalized. So it's very subject to error. I mean, you have an oath of allegiance, and that's probably that if you getting that from Ancestry where it's part of his packet, the date might be more accurate because it's actually documentation that would come from the government. Whereas like the census is a reportable, it's a guiding post. It's not going to necessarily give you the answer definitively. So you're either going to need to do some research to confirm the 1939 year for allegiance and the something that happened in the 30s, to move it forward to say that that's really when the naturalization took place. Because then you can look at 1930, it probably says he's either papers or alien. In 1940, he would necessarily be naturalized again. So, you might have an anomaly happening in 1910 to say he was naturalized. Maybe they may have misread it or somebody wrote it wrong. But again, it's not a guarantee. It could be a mistake, and that you have to kind of like allow that to happen, and then continue to, you have a date. I would start to try to confirm that date, either by USCIS providing them all the information all the way up, so they can identify him, and then give you the actual information, because they will give you the actual information about when he naturalized. That's what I would do. I wouldn't get hung up on which date is right, or which marking of AL versus NA or PA is on the census, because that'll drive you right down right down a rabbit hole, and you're not going to get out of it easily, because you're going to
I
try
think
to
I'm already there,
pick
if I'm
that
being
piece.
completely
Yeah.
honest.
Yeah, so let that go, and just go to the other end and just see if you can get the confirmation using the USCIS genealogy. That's what I would say. So
thing.
I mean but I think putting in an email would be easy as well, just to be able to collect your thoughts, and that makes it easier, so then exactly like which direction you're going to be, looking for any help on our end, specifically
Alright.
around. It sounds like you got a 1948 case going on there too.
So you think I do? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I don't know, but I mean, it sounds like that's what you're looking at.
Uh,
I don't know the dates. That's what we have to find out,
And
is
I
the
don't-
dates going forward.
Okay.
So
and
that's
the
what you, but
USCIS,
so that's
how do I
the,
email that?
yeah. So Jerry, is that
Yeah, I'll
uscis.gov?
put,
Is it in the,
yes,
is it
I'll put
in
it
the
in
chat?
that chat.
No,
Yeah, I'll
Okay,
put it in
thank
the
you.
chat.
Yeah, it's just
I'll
a
put it
place
in
where
the
you'd
chat.
want to go. You'd go online basically, and you would make a request online and pay for a request and have it go through. But they're going to be asking for a ton of information to help you identify your ancestor.
Okay.
So I'm sorry, I'm just looking at the time. It's at
Yeah.
7:35. Are there I don't want to not give people an opportunity to ask their questions, but if there are other questions that you can either email to us, be happy to respond to them, or put them in the chat, but I don't want to keep people too much longer at this point. Are there
Yeah.
any are there any burning questions that someone needs to have answered now? Again, I'm just sensitive to the time. Everyone okay?
I don't know if Dan has it, if his hand hasn't come down from when he spoke or what, but his
Oh.
hand is up.
Is
Yeah.
Dan-
Oh, I'm
it's probably
sorry,
the same.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know how to take it
Dan, your
down.
arm must be
We can
tired.
do
And
it.
have you been
That's
holding
right.
it up there for a
Yeah.
long time?
That's right.
Hello?
You're doing pretty well with your hand up in the air.
But as I said, so this presentation will be posted to our website. Honestly, feel free to email us. It's always, because as you can tell, it's so complicated, and dates and names and places. So it's always best if you can provide as much detail in an email to us that we can at least evaluate and give you some, solid direction at least, or some solid next steps to pursue.
Yeah, it's a lot. You can, Jerry and Lisa and I had different paths, and obviously you can hear just in the questions the paths people are traveling with lines, and which lines, and whether you have a 1948 case. I mean, marriage, we talked a little about marriage. I did see, am I out of luck with marriage? No, you're not. So things like that, we try to touch in the presentation, but if there's something that you didn't here or had a question, just send the email along. We'll definitely answer those.
And the slides will be available on the Vika website. William was asking, so people will be able to
Yeah.
download those.
Yeah, I'll download there's actually one version up there now, which is pretty complete, but I'll update it so you can find everything there along with our emails. Okay.
So
Daniel,
there's just
anything?
one, there's
Oh.
just one real quick. This is from Galaxy S10. My great grandfather came here in 1921, never naturalized. My grandfather was born in 1922 in Boston. My mom born in 52, and then me in 75. Does it still qualify? So you're not a 1948 case. So you have a male to a female to you. Your female had you in 75. So your mother is able to receive it from her father and pass it on to you. So that qualifies you as far as the timeline, as far as whether you have a 48 case or not. Never naturalized, that would mean you'd have to prove and get a certificate of non-existence, potentially through USCIS. They're going to have to determine and do some investigating about your great grandfather as the immigrant and get his alien file and find out if in fact he naturalized. It's possible, it's really good that if he came here in 21 and your father was born in 22, that he probably didn't naturalize right away. But the USCIS will definitely give you a confirmation, but you're going to give them a ton of information about your great grandfather. So you're going to be scouring census records, looking for addresses, including all of the children and approximate years of birth, the spouse or the wife, anybody in the family, and just you're going to go through each line, forward line, each line, or each census record going forward, and that will be able to provide them as much information to clearly identify your great grandfather. And if they do decide that you've given them enough information and they can give you a certificate of non-existence, that is your proof. That is what potentially you'll need to move it forward, because the other pieces line up. You don't have a 48 case because the birth of your mom giving birth to you. It's really like, when did the woman give birth to her children? That's going to be the case. She qualifies because it comes from her paternal grandfather. So in a nutshell, that you would qualify at least based upon the 1948 case, but then you got to make sure that the line was not broken because of naturalization.
Okay. Daniel, anything? Did you want to? I don't want to sign off, but if you
I
want to do
just
anything
wanna-
else.
You can sign us off. You can sign us
Sure.
off, Daniel.
Well, I just want to
Yeah.
say once again, thank you so much to all of you for sharing all this information with us. I think I have a lot that I know what my next steps will be, and so thank you.
Good.
This has been really informative, and we really appreciate your time.
Sure.
And thank you very much for putting all of this together for us.
Absolutely. Well, keep
Yeah,
in touch,
well,
Daniel.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was a
Yeah.
pleasure. It's always good to meet fellow travelers in this journey. So it's
Agreed.
yeah,
Appreciate
yeah.
it.
We didn't even talk about, we didn't even, I think in the presentation, we didn't even talk about the benefits of why you would want this. I know
Yeah.
somebody asked a question about conscription and whether their kids have to serve. Well, if it's being recorded, I'm going to just say it. They will not have to serve. I had the same worry as well with my kids when they were minors. There is no conscription. There is no military draft or any kind of requirement for them to register
have to
to
pay
be in the
taxes.
military in Italy. Correct. So you are
Don't pay taxes, you
safe.
can vote.
Safe. There you go, Sarah. I'm glad
You may have
stood
to
on
worry
it.
in this.
You
you
are
only may-
safe. You're safe. Jerry?
You may have to worry in this country, though. Maybe.
Correct. You'll have to still pay taxes here, but yeah, you don't have to. All of my kids are all, I mean, they're all over the age now, but my youngest son was 16. But I really wanted to do this in 98, and that was a concern because back in the late 90s and early 2000s, it was still conscription was still a requirement. So that really said, I really don't want my sons to have to, they won't do it in America because they don't have to, but like they have to go to Italy and do this. I don't know. My grandfather didn't do it. My father didn't do it. I'm not going to have my kids now go to Italy. So that's gone. No need for that anymore.
Okay. Thank
All
you
right.
all.
Thank you, everybody.
Grazie mille. Thank
See,
you.
ciao, ciao.
Thanks for
Okay,
hanging in
buonanotte.
there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye now.
Buonanotte.
Bye.
Buonanotte.
Buonanotte.